The backstage corridors of the Sands Hotel smelled like cigarette smoke, expensive cologne, and ambition. It was November 18th, 1961, just past midnight. The show had ended 20 minutes ago. The applause had faded. The audience had filtered out into the casino, still buzzing from another electric Rat Pack performance. Sammy Davis Jr. sat alone in his dressing room, wiping off stage makeup. He was exhausted in the best way possible. The kind of tired that comes from giving everything you have to an audience and having them give it right back. His tuxedo jacket hung on a hook. His bow tie was undone, hanging loose around his collar. He was humming softly to himself, one of the melodies from tonight's show. This was his sanctuary. This small room with the mirror surrounded by lights, the leather couch against the wall, the flowers from admirers already wilting in their vases. After every performance, Sammy needed this quiet time, a moment to decompress, to come down from the high of performing, to remember who he was when he wasn't Sammy Davis Jr., entertainer extraordinaire. He was 36 years old, at the absolute peak of his powers. He could sing, dance, do impressions, play instruments, act. He was being called the greatest entertainer alive. But he was also a black man in 1961 America, and that meant even at the peak of his powers, even headlining at the Sands, even as part of the Rat Pack, he lived with a certain wariness. The other guys, Frank and Dean and Peter and Joey, they could walk through Vegas like they owned it. And in many ways, they did. But Sammy always had to be careful, had to be charming, had to make white audiences comfortable, had to navigate the constant microaggressions, and sometimes not so microaggressions that came with being successful while black. Still, tonight had been good. The audience had loved him. Dean had been on fire, making Sammy laugh so hard during one bit that he'd nearly fallen off the stage. Frank had been in a generous mood, giving Sammy extra solo time. These were his brothers, his chosen family. And when he was with them, he could almost forget about the rest of it. There was a knock at the door. Sammy assumed it was one of the guys coming by to recap the show, share a drink, decompress together. They did that sometimes. Brotherhood was about more than just what happened on stage. "Come in," Sammy called out, still focused on the mirror, wiping cold cream across his forehead. The door opened, but it wasn't Dean or Frank or any of the Rat Pack. It was three men Sammy had never seen before. Big men, hard men, the kind of men who carried violence with them like a cologne. The one in front was in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit that strained against his bulk. His face was fleshy and cruel, with small eyes that assessed Sammy like he was merchandise. His name was Tony, the barber Castellano, though Sammy didn't know that yet. He was a capo regime in the Genovese crime family, in Vegas for a weekend of gambling and looking for entertainment that went beyond the casino floor. "Sammy Davis Jr.," Tony said, his voice carrying a thick Brooklyn accent. The famous Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy stood up slowly, his instincts screaming danger. He'd been around mobsters before. Vegas was run by them. The Sands was partially owned by them. But this felt different. These men hadn't knocked and waited for permission. They just walked in like they owned not just a hotel, but him. "Gentlemen," Sammy said, keeping his voice pleasant, non-threatening. "Can I help you with something? If you want autographs, I'd be happy to." "Shut up," Tony said casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "I didn't come here to listen to you talk." Part 2, the arrival of danger. The two men with Tony moved to flank the door. One of them turned the lock with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Sammy's heart was racing now, but he kept his face neutral. Years of dealing with racism, with threats both subtle and overt, had taught him to hide fear. Showing fear was giving them power. "I saw your show tonight," Tony continued, moving further into the room. He picked up a framed photograph from Sammy's dressing table. Sammy with Frank and Dean, all of them laughing. Tony looked at it for a moment, then set it back down. "You're very talented, very entertaining. You know what I found most entertaining?" Sammy didn't answer. He was calculating distances, exits. The door was locked and blocked. The window was too small. There was nowhere to go. "Your hair," Tony said and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. All that process hair. Straightened and pomaded and styled. You spend a lot of time on your hair, don't you, Sammy? Look, Sammy said, trying to keep his voice steady. If there's some kind of problem, if I did something to offend you, I apologize. But I've got people expecting me. My friends are probably looking for me right now. Your friends, Tony repeated, his voice mocking. You mean Frank Sinatra? Dean Martin? Those friends. He laughed. Sammy, those men aren't your friends. They let you perform with them because you're talented and because it makes them look liberal and progressive. But you really think they see you as an equal? You really think they bleed for you? The word stung because they touched on Sammy's deepest insecurities. The questions he asked himself in the dark hours of the night. Were they really his brothers? Or was he just the acceptable black friend? The one who made him look good? We're family, Sammy said, but even his own ears, it sounded defensive. Family, Tony scoffed. He reached into his jacket and Sammy tensed, expecting a weapon. But what Tony pulled out was worse, in a way. A pair of electric clippers. Professional barber's clippers, heavy and industrial. You know why they call me the barber, Sammy? Sammy's mouth went dry. No, because I used to cut hair in Brooklyn, before I moved into other business. But I never lost my touch. And you know what? I've been thinking all night about what it would be like to cut that process hair of yours. To see what's really underneath all that pretension. To see you as you really are, not this character you play for white audiences. Please, Sammy said, and he hated the pleading tone in his voice, hated that he was begging. But he understood now what was about to happen. Please don't do this. Don't do what? Tony asked innocently. Give you a haircut? I'm doing you a favor, Sammy, helping you be authentic. Isn't that what all you entertainers want? To be authentic. He plugged the clippers into an outlet near the mirror. They buzzed to life with mechanical where that sounded like a swarm of angry insects. Sammy backed away until he hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. Hold him, Tony said. The two men moved quickly. They were professionals at violence. One grabbed Sammy's arms, wrenching him behind his back. The other forced him down into the chair in front of the mirror. Sammy struggled, but they were too strong, too practiced. Within seconds, he was immobilized, forced to stare at his own terrified reflection. This is assault, Sammy said desperately. You can't just... I can do whatever I want, Tony said simply. That's the thing about power, Sammy. When you have it, rules don't apply to you. Now sit still or this gets worse. Part 3, the humiliation. The first pass of the clippers across Sammy's scalp felt like a violation. Not physically painful, but psychologically devastating. Sammy watched in the mirror as a strip of his carefully styled hair fell away, revealing the vulnerable scalp beneath. He'd worn his hair processed and styled his entire adult life. It was part of his image, part of how he presented himself to the world. Losing it felt like losing a layer of protection. Tony worked methodically, almost lovingly. He was humming while he did it. Some Italian song Sammy didn't recognize. Strip by strip, Sammy's hair fell to the floor. The men holding him were laughing quietly, making comments. Look at that. He looks like a different person. More honest this way, don't you think? What do you think Frank Sinatra is going to say when he sees this? Sammy closed his eyes, unable to watch anymore. Tears were running down his face, and he couldn't stop them. He was 36 years old, at the peak of his career, and he was being held down and forcibly shaved by mobsters because they thought it was funny, because they wanted to humiliate him, because they could. Open your eyes, Tony commanded. I want you to watch. I want you to see what I see. A man who pretends to be something he's not, getting stripped down to the truth. Sammy opened his eyes. He had no choice. In the mirror, he saw a stranger. His head was now almost completely shaved, just stubble remaining. He looked exposed, vulnerable. All the carefully constructed armor of his public persona had been literally cut away. You know what the funny thing is? Tony said, working on the final section of hair. Your friends, the Rat Pack, they perform in front of integrated audiences. They talk about equality, but they play in casinos that won't let black people like you stay in the rooms or eat in the restaurants. They talk big about brotherhood, but at the end of the day, they go back to their lives, and you go back to whatever separate accommodations they've made for you. So tell me, Sammy, how much is that brotherhood really worth? The Clippers fell silent. Tony unplugged them and stepped back, admiring his work. Sammy's head was completely shaved now, smooth and vulnerable. Hair covered the floor around a chair like evidence of a crime. There, Tony said with satisfaction. That's better. That's honest. No more pretending to be something you're not. He dropped a $100 bill on the dressing table. For the haircut, I always pay for services rendered. The men released Sammy. He sat there, shaking, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. The three mobsters moved toward the door. Tony paused with his hand on the knob. You know what you're going to do now, Sammy? You're going to sit here and think about what just happened. And you're going to realize that all the fame and talent in the world doesn't change what you really are in this town. And then you're going to keep your mouth shut about this. Because if you don't, well, he smiled. Let's just say next time, I'll take more than your hair. They left. The lock clicked. Sammy sat alone in front of the mirror, staring at his shaved head, surrounded by his fallen hair. He was still crying, but now the tears were mixed with something else. Shame, rage, and a deep, aching loneliness. He'd been wrong. Tony was wrong about the Rat Pack, wrong about Dean and Frank and the others. But that knowledge didn't help right now. Right now, he just felt violated and alone and small. Sammy didn't know how long he sat there. Time had become meaningless. But eventually, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone knocked on the door. Sam, you in there? It was Dean Martin's voice. Easy, concerned, the voice of someone who actually cared. Sammy tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't work. He tried again. Yeah, I'm here. You okay? You've been back here a while. We were getting worried. Sammy looked at himself in the mirror one more time. The bald, vulnerable stranger looking back at him. Yeah, he lied. I'm fine. But his voice betrayed him. It cracked on the last word. I'm coming in, Dean said. Part 4. Dean discovers what happened. The door wasn't locked anymore. Tony and his men hadn't bothered to relock it when they left. Dean pushed it open and walked in, and Sammy saw the exact moment when Dean registered what he was seeing. Dean froze. His easy smile disappeared. His eyes moved from Sammy's shaved head to the hair covering the floor to the clippers still sitting on the dressing table. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, shock, understanding, and then something Sammy had rarely seen on Dean Martin's face. Pure, cold rage. Sam, Dean said quietly. He walked over slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Sam, what happened? Who did this? It doesn't matter, Sammy said, trying to pull himself together. It's done. Just leave it alone, Dean. Like hell it doesn't matter. Dean was kneeling now, picking up handfuls of Sammy's hair from the floor. This isn't something that just happened. Someone did this to you. Who? Sammy shook his head. He was trying so hard not to fall apart completely. Dean, please. Just let it go. If I tell you, it'll only make things worse. Worse than this. Dean gestured at Sammy's head. Sam, look at me. Sammy met Dean's eyes. They were blazing with an intensity Sammy had never seen before. Dean Martin was many things. Charming, funny, talented, laid back. But right now, he looked like a man capable of violence. Of justice. Tell me who did this, Dean said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute certainty. Tell me their names. And Sammy realized something in that moment. Tony had been wrong. Dead wrong. Because Dean wasn't asking out of curiosity. He wasn't asking to decide whether it was worth getting involved. He was asking because he was already committed to doing something about it. The only question was who he needed to find. 3 guys, Sammy said, his voice barely above a whisper. Mobsters. The one in charge called himself the barber. Tony something. They just walked in here and... His voice broke. They held me down, Dean. They held me down and shaved my head while they laughed. While they told me that my friendship with you guys wasn't real, that I was just entertainment, that all my success didn't change what I really was. Dean's jaw clenched so tight, Sammy could see the muscles jumping. Tony the barber Castellano. Genovese family out of New York. I know who he is. Dean stood up. Where is he now? I don't know. He left maybe 20 minutes ago. He's probably in the casino. Guys like that, they can't resist gambling when they're feeling powerful. Dean walked to the door. Stay here, Sam. Dean, wait. Sammy stood up. You can't go after him. He's connected. He's dangerous. And he's right that I'm different, that I don't have the same... Stop, Dean interrupted. He walked back and put both hands on Sammy's shoulders, looking directly into his eyes. Listen to me very carefully. That piece of garbage was wrong about everything. You're not less than anyone. Not me, not Frank, not anybody. You're my brother. You understand what that means? It means when someone hurts you, they hurt me. When someone humiliates you, they humiliate me. And when some mobster punk thinks he can walk into your dressing room and violate you for fun, he's going to learn what happens when you mess with my family. Dean, he'll kill you. Maybe, Dean said with a cold smile. But first, I'm going to make him wish he'd never heard the name Sammy Davis Jr. Now stay here. I'll be back. I'm coming with you, Sammy said. Standing up? Sam, you don't have to. I'm coming with you, Sammy repeated firmly. This happened to me. I'm not hiding in my dressing room while you fight my battles. If we're doing this, we do it together. Dean studied his face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Together? But Sam, this is going to get ugly. Are you ready for that? Sammy looked at himself in the mirror one more time, at his shaved head, at the evidence of his humiliation. Then he looked at Dean, at his brother. Yeah, I'm ready. Part 5, the confrontation. They found Tony Castellano at a blackjack table in the high roller section of casino. He was surrounded by his 2 goons, drinking expensive scotch and gambling with the casual confidence of a man who'd just gotten away with something. When he looked up and saw Sammy and Dean approaching, his face split into a cruel grin. Well, well, Tony said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Look who it is. Sammy Davis Jr. and his friend Dean Martin. Sammy, I gotta say, that haircut looks good on you. Much more honest. Much more real. His companions laughed. A few other gamblers looked over, curious about the commotion. Dean walked right up to the table. His posture was relaxed, but Sammy could see the tension in his shoulders, the coiled readiness. Tony Castellano, Dean said conversationally, also known as the barber. I've heard about you. Have you? Tony leaned back in his chair. All good things, I hope. Not particularly, Dean said. I heard you like to humiliate people, like to hurt them, that you get off on making people feel small. Is that true? Tony's smile faded slightly. You got something to say to me, Martin? Yeah, I do. I want to know why you walked into my friend's dressing room and assaulted him. I want to know what kind of coward needs 2 men to help him hold down a performer so he can give him an unwanted haircut. I want to know what made you think that was acceptable behavior. The casino had gone quiet around them. People were watching now. Dealers had stopped dealing. The click of chips had ceased. This was Vegas. Confrontations happened. But a confrontation between Dean Martin and a known mobster? That was entertainment you couldn't buy. Acceptable? Tony stood up slowly. He was bigger than Dean, heavier. His guys stood up too, flanking him. Let me explain something to you, Martin. I do what I want, to whoever I want, whenever I want. That's how the world works. Your little friend here got a free haircut. He should be grateful. Grateful, Dean repeated. The word came out flat, dangerous. He should be grateful that 3 cowards broke into his dressing room, held him down against his will, violated his dignity, and humiliated him? That's your position. My position, Tony said, stepping closer to Dean, is that you should mind your own business before you get hurt. Sammy is my business, Dean said. He's my brother. And you made him my business the moment you touched him. Your brother? Tony laughed. You hearing this? He looked around at his guys, at the growing crowd. Dean Martin thinks this. He jabbed a finger toward Sammy. Is his brother. That's funny, Dean. That's really funny. You want to know what I think? I think you feel guilty about being white and successful. So you let the colored boy tag along to make yourself feel progressive. But he's not your brother. He's entertainment. He's a novelty act. The slur hung in the air. Several people in the crowd gasped. Even in Vegas, even in 1961, saying something like that so openly was shocking. Sammy felt sick. Part of him wanted to leave, to walk away, to avoid the spectacle. But Dean's hand on his shoulder kept him grounded, kept him present. You know what your problem is, Tony? Dean said, his voice calm despite the rage Sammy could see in his eyes. You think power comes from intimidation, from making people afraid. But real power, real strength, that comes from protecting people who can't protect themselves, from standing up when it's hard, from being willing to risk everything for what's right. This is Vegas, Martin. Nothing is right. Everything's for sale, including your little friend's dignity. Wrong, Dean said. His dignity isn't for sale, and neither is mine. But you know what is available? A wager. That caught Tony's attention. Mobsters love gambling. It was their religion. What kind of wager? Dean gestured at the blackjack table. You and me, one hand. If I lose, I'll publicly apologize to you. I'll get on that stage tomorrow night and tell everyone that you were right, that Sammy's not really my brother, that I was wrong to challenge you. I'll humiliate myself the way you humiliated him. And if you win? Tony asked suspiciously. If I win, Dean said, you sit in a chair in the middle of this casino and let me shave your head. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. The crowd murmured. This was escalating beyond what anyone had expected. Tony's face darkened. You want to shave my head? In public? The same way you shaved Sammy's head. Dean said. Seems fair to me. Of course, if you're too scared to risk it. I'm not scared of anything, Tony snapped. But Sammy could see the calculation in his eyes, could see him weighing odds, considering angles. Then we have a bet, Dean said. He turned to the dealer. One hand. Standard rules. Whatever we're both dealt, we play it. No splits, no double downs. Pure luck. God decides who's right. Dean, Sammy whispered urgently, you can't do this. If you lose. I won't lose, Dean said with absolute confidence. How do you know? Dean looked at him and smiled. Because I'm right. And because I'm not going to let you down. Not tonight. Not ever. Tony sat down. Dean sat down across from him. The dealer looked between them nervously, understanding that this was bigger than a simple hand of blackjack. This was a referendum on something important. Deal, Dean said. Part 6. Dean's Revenge. The dealer's hand shook slightly as he dealt the cards. Everyone in the immediate area had crowded around now. The pit boss had appeared, looking alarmed. But even he didn't have the authority to stop this. Not when Dean Martin, and a known mobster, had made a public wager. Tony's cards came first. He didn't touch them, letting them sit face down on the table. The cocky grin had returned to his face. Whatever he had, he was confident. Dean's cards came next. He looked at them without any expression. Then he looked up at Sammy and winked. Flip, Dean said. Tony turned over his cards with a flourish. Queen of Hearts. 9 of Spades. 19. An excellent hand. Mathematically, one of the best possible draws in blackjack. His grin widened. Beat that, Martin. Dean looked at his cards one more time. Then he turned them over slowly, deliberately. 10 of clubs, ace of spades, blackjack, 21. The crowd erupted. Tony's face went white, then red with rage. That's impossible. You cheated. You had to have. Careful, Dean interrupted. There are about 50 witnesses here who just watched the dealer give us both random cards. You calling me a cheater is calling all of them liars. Now, are you going to honor the bet, or are you going to welch? Because I got to tell you, Tony, welching on a bet in a casino? That's not going to look good for your reputation. Tony looked around. Every eye was on him. Some of the watchers were other mobsters, other connected guys, men who cared about honor, about keeping your word. In Vegas, in the mob world, Welching on a gambling debt was unforgivable. "You son of a bitch," Tony said quietly. "That's not an answer," Dean said. "Do you honor the bet or not?" The silence stretched out. Tony's two goons looked uncertain, waiting for their boss to tell them what to do. Finally, Tony stood up. "Yeah, I honor it. But Martin, this isn't over. You just made an enemy." "I already had an enemy," Dean said, "from the moment you walked into Sammy's dressing room. This just makes it official." Someone brought a chair. Someone else brought clippers, the same industrial clippers Tony had used on Sammy. Dean took them, tested them, plugged them in. The mechanical were drew an audible reaction from the crowd. Tony sat down in the chair. His face was rigid with suppressed fury and humiliation. His goons stood nearby, hands twitching, clearly wanted to intervene, but knowing they couldn't without making things infinitely worse. Dean walked around the chair slowly. "You know what's interesting about this moment, Tony? You had a choice. You could have apologized. You could have made this right. But you were so convinced that power and intimidation were all that mattered. That being feared was the same as being respected. You were wrong." He placed the clippers at Tony's hairline. "This is for Sammy." The first strip of hair fell away. Tony's expensive haircut, carefully styled and maintained, disappeared in one pass of the clippers. His jaw clenched so tight Sammy thought he might crack a tooth. Dean worked methodically, just as Tony had, strip by strip, pass by pass. Tony's hair fell to the casino floor, mixing with cigarette butts and dropped chips. The ultimate humiliation for a man who'd built his reputation on being feared. But Dean wasn't humiliating him with glee. He wasn't laughing. He was serious, almost surgical. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. This was justice. This was a statement being made in front of everyone. You can't humiliate good people and get away with it. Not on Dean Martin's watch. When it was done, Tony's head was completely shaved. He looked smaller somehow, less intimidating. His carefully constructed aura of power had been literally cut away. Dean unplugged the clippers and set them down. Then he pulled out his wallet and placed a $100 bill on the table next to Tony's chair. "For the haircut, I always pay for services rendered." Tony's face went purple. Those were his exact words from Sammy's dressing room. Dean had thrown them back at him in front of everyone. "Now," Dean said, addressing the crowd as much as Tony, "I want to make something very clear. What happened here tonight started because this man walked into Sammy Davis Jr.'s dressing room and assaulted him. He violated him. He humiliated him for fun. That's not okay. That's never okay. I don't care who you are. I don't care how connected you are. You do not touch my family." He put his hand on Sammy's shoulder. "This man is my brother, not because of blood, because of choice, because of respect, because of love. And anyone who disrespects him disrespects me. Anyone who hurts him will answer to me. That's not a threat. That's a promise." Tony stood up from the chair, his shaved head gleaming under the casino lights. He looked at Dean with pure hatred. "You're a dead man, Martin." "Maybe," Dean said, "but I'm a dead man with a clean conscience. Can you say the same?" Tony and his goons pushed through the crowd and left. The show was over. But something had changed. Sammy could feel it. The crowd that had watched this unfold wasn't just entertained. They were moved. Some of them were crying because they just witnessed something rare. A powerful man using his power to protect someone weaker, risking everything to stand up for what was right. Part 7. The immediate aftermath. Back in Sammy's dressing room, neither man spoke for a long time. They just sat there, both emotionally exhausted. Dean poured them each a drink from the bottle he kept in Sammy's room. They drank in silence. Finally, Sammy said, "Dean, do you understand what you just did? Tony Castellano is connected to the Genovese family. He's going to want revenge. He's going to come after you." "I know," Dean said calmly. "You could lose your career. You could lose your life. And for what? For me. For you," Dean confirmed. "For what's right. For brotherhood. Sam, that bastard shaved your head like you were property, like you were something to be used and discarded. How could I know that happened and do nothing? A lot of people would have done nothing," Sammy said quietly. A lot of people would have said it wasn't their problem. Then a lot of people are cowards, Dean said simply. He looked at Sammy's shaved head. For what it's worth, the look works for you. Very modern, very ahead of the curve. Despite everything, Sammy laughed. It was a broken sound, but it was genuine. You're trying to make me feel better about being forcibly shaved by a mobster. I'm trying to make you understand that your worth isn't in your hair or your image or anything that can be taken away. Your worth is in who you are, and who you are is the most talented, brave, dignified man I know. Tony Castellano couldn't take that away from you. Nobody can. Sammy felt tears coming again, but these were different from the tears he cried earlier. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of understanding that he'd been wrong to doubt. His friendship with Dean, with Frank, with the whole Rat Pack, it was real, it was family, and family protected each other, even when it was dangerous. I was so scared, Sammy admitted. When they were holding me down, when I was watching my hair fall away, I felt so small, so powerless. And part of me believed what Tony said, that you guys didn't really see me as an equal, that I was just a novelty. Never, Dean said fiercely. Don't you ever believe that. You're not a novelty. You're not a token. You're Sammy Davis Jr., you're my brother. And what I did tonight, that wasn't charity or guilt or performative allyship. That was family, pure and simple. Thank you, Sammy said. The words felt inadequate for what Dean had done, for what he'd risked, but they were all he had. Don't thank me, Dean said. Brothers don't thank each other for being brothers. It's just what we do. Part 8, Long-Term Impact and Legacy. The story of what happened that night spread through Las Vegas like wildfire. By morning, everyone knew. Dean Martin had publicly humiliated a Genovese capo to defend Sammy Davis Jr. He'd risked his career, possibly his life, to stand up for what was right. Tony Castellano left Vegas the next day and never returned. Word filtered back that his bosses in New York had been furious about the attention, about the very public loss of face. A made man getting shaved in the middle of the casino by Dean Martin? That was the kind of story that made the organization look weak. Tony's status in the family was never the same after that night. But more importantly, something changed in how Vegas operated. Other mobsters, other powerful men who'd been treating black entertainers with casual cruelty, suddenly thought twice. Because if Dean Martin was willing to risk everything to defend Sammy Davis Jr., what else might he be willing to do? What other performers might follow his lead? The incident deepened the bond between all the Rat Pack, but especially between Dean and Sammy. They'd been close before. After that night, they were inseparable. Sammy knew, with absolute certainty, that Dean would die for him if necessary, and Dean knew that Sammy would do the same. In interviews years later, Sammy would often bring up that night, not the humiliation of being forcibly shaved, but the power of watching Dean stand up for him. That night changed my life, Sammy would say, not because of what Tony did, but because of what Dean did. He showed me that brotherhood isn't just a word. It's a choice you make every day to stand with someone, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The incident also became part of the Rat Pack legend, not the drinking or the partying or the cool factor, but this moment, this demonstration of what real friendship, real family really meant. It meant Dean risking everything to defend Sammy's dignity. It meant refusing to let racism and cruelty stand, even when the racist was dangerous. It meant understanding that some things, dignity, respect, human decency, were worth fighting for no matter cost. Dean Martin never regretted what he did that night. When asked about it, he would shrug and say, "Sammy's my brother. What else was I going to do?" What else, indeed, in a world where most people looked the other way, where most people decided that standing up wasn't worth the risk, Dean Martin had looked at a mobster and said, "You will respect my brother or you will answer to me." That's the real legacy of the Rat Pack. Not the songs or the movies or the famous performances, but the moment when Dean Martin bet everything on a single hand of blackjack to defend Sammy Davis Jr.'s dignity. The moment when friendship became brotherhood. The moment when one man's courage redefined what loyalty really means. November 18th, 1961. The night a Mafia boss shaved Sammy Davis Jr.'s head for fun. The night Dean Martin walked in for revenge. The night that proved love is stronger than fear, that brotherhood is more powerful than violence, and that standing up for what's right is always worth the risk. That's a performance worth remembering. That's a brotherhood worth celebrating. That's what it means to be family.